I would like to invite Mr. Arthur Sajid, the moderator for the panel, and the panelist for the session on how to kickstart investments in the power sector. So, Mr. Ather Sajid, may I invite you, sir, and please, the panelist Manuel Aquino, Mr. Reynaldo Umali, and Mr. Guarin. Kindly welcome these eminent panelists with a big clap. And please have your questions ready. We'll have a question session immediately after.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to invite first Mr. Chair, the Congressman. His name does not need any introduction. We call him now the man of re-engineering of energy sector. So please, sir. Our topic is more about capacity. Capacity of the Philippines is something very unique blend and combination of a success story and ups and downs. That it does not need any introduction. What unique thing about capacity, I think, is only in the world next second largest in terms of renewable energy, and still growing with the pace which what Mylene Kaboko said, sooner or later will be 30% capacity. Sir, please. Yes, please. Take it.
Good morning to everyone. I will no longer do the acknowledgement because I think we have time constraint here, or do we? Anyway, let me congratulate Terrapin for your initiative to hold the Second Power Electricity World Philippines 2015. Indeed, this Power Summit is very timely as the Philippines needs longer-term solutions to energy requirement because as I speak, the website of the NGCP reports that our peak demand is at 11,611 megawatts versus the available capacity of 12,831 megawatts, which means that we have a very thin reserve of only almost about 1,200. In particular, Luzon and Mindanao have reserve capacity of 1,408 and 68 megawatts respectively, while Visayas is presently at negative 256 or 256 megawatt. We can only hope that our power plants run and serve its maximum capacity because the economy cannot afford blackouts or brownouts, bearing in mind that the most expensive power is no power. And so, as chair of the Committee on Energy and co-chair of JCPC, I am quite challenged on this particular topic, the need for more blackouts, what needs to happen to kickstart serious investment on capacity building. Thus, I am reminded of the joint resolution or what they call the emergency power for this summer. Fortunately, despite the Malampaya turnaround scheduled from March 15 to April 14, 2015, and the El Nino phenomenon, Luzon did not experience the feared rotating brownout. In fact, the Energy Committee and JCPC closely monitored the demand-supply situation starting in March of 2015, which revealed that we even experienced a net surplus of at least 1,500 megawatts and the demand then was almost about 400 to 500 megawatts less of what was projected. And so, we did not use even a single kilowatt of the ILP or interruptible load program, which rose from initially 115 megawatts to about 900 megawatts. And because of this, we were able to save the country some 6 billion if we did lease a 300 megawatt power plant, or if we bought it at about 12 billion. And so, I must say that without our collective effort and Bayanihan spirit, And if we did not do the right thing, our country could have suffered from rotating brownouts and would have spent, as I said, about 6 to 12 billion pesos, which is the cost of leasing or buying modular gensets. Since we successfully addressed a short-term problem with a palliative solution, we cannot rest on our laurels yet. Be it remembered that Visayas and Mindanao have been experiencing power crisis for quite some time now. So what's next? Government now needs to go beyond palliatives and think longer term. Yes, the country needs to address demand generation imbalance to overcome the small size of the country's power networks, which create grid restrictions, limiting generation capacity, to address regulatory hurdles to capacity building, and finally to find investments to oversee infrastructure development in the power sector. To this end, we need to declare the power infrastructure as power of national significance or interest to hasten the process for securing licenses and permits, including approvals of PSAs for power projects. Also, we need to promote energy efficiency and conservation as a way of life. And finally, to ensure a sustainable power development program and to fulfill the promise of EPIRA of sufficient and reliable power at affordable rates, we need to adopt a proper energy mix, and we need to adopt better and more efficient technologies that is sensitive to climate change and or responsive to climate change initiatives. The next question then is, where do we start? So at this juncture, I am reminded that this is what I always tell my colleagues in Congress, of my experience while campaigning for elections in 2010. I went to a small sitio, which is smaller than barangay, and I encountered there the people who did not want us to go inside the sitio if we did not bring power to their households. And so this particular experience opened my mind into the importance of power to every consumer and to every citizen. And so what I did was, upon my assumption as congressman, as representative of my district, I called our electric cooperative called Ormeco, and I called NEA, and asked them to submit to me a list of all sitios that are unenergized in my district. And lo and behold, I got and I was able to consolidate it. I passed it on to my local officials, the mayors, asked them to complete it, and we were able to consolidate a list of about 2,300 sitios in the province that we needed funds from DOE. But then I confronted the former Secretary Almendras and asked him for some funds, because in the past they were only giving our district about 5 to 7 million pesos, and at the rate of about $1 million per sitio, that will only mean about 5 to 7 sitios per year. And so I did not want that. I asked them to fund it entirely, a program of about 1,800 sitios to be energized for a cost of approximately 1.8 billion. And so Secretary Almendras told me, we do not have that money. Fortunately for my province, we hosted the submarine, or rather the submarine pipelines of Malampaya, and so I asked, we should be considered a host community, and because we are considered a host community, funds should come from Malampaya. And so Secretary Almendras told us that that is not within my power, that is the power of the President, because he is the one who programs that money, then we asked the President, and in 2012, the President went to Mindoro to announce that by 2014, Mindoro Oriental will be fully energized. And so I'm happy to note that we have almost achieved our first milestone because 95% of all our sitios in Mindoro are now energized. But then, because we have energized so much of our sitios, our next hurdle was power supply. In 2012, when I started the sitio energization program, we only probably had about, our peak demand was only about 25 megawatts. And with the entry of all of these sitio energized areas, our consumption, our demand rose from 25 to 40 megawatts. And so, again, as a palliative measure, because we have a lot of resources in Mindoro which are renewable, like the 40 megawatts geothermal that was started in 2014, and in March 2015, steam already flowed out of our geothermal fields of about 40 megawatts. Then I think we are there to be able to supply the demand of 40 megawatts. Then again, we have two other renewable projects of 10 megawatts each of hydropower, and these are now work in progress. But we cannot wait for 2015 or 2016 or even 2017 before this power comes in. And so we ask some companies to put up 10 megawatts in Mindoro by Mindoro Grid Corporation and another 15 megawatts by DMCI, and this 15 megawatts was just inaugurated last February of this year. And so we have an additional capacity of 25 megawatts to make our total supply to 50, and now we are even 10 megawatts over our demand, and we are even sharing 4 megawatts of this to our neighboring province, Occidental Mindoro. But then again, even with a surplus power supply, we are still experiencing brownouts. This is the complexity of the power sector. This is the difficulties that we need to hurdle because power projects cannot be installed overnight. It takes time, especially with the government regulations and processes that you'll have to go through. And so, now we did realize that our transmission line is still not fully looped. And so I asked Napocor to already provide us all of the requirements to fully loop Mindoro, both Occidental, the whole island, Oriental and Occidental, and likewise upgrade it from 69 kV to 138 kV line. And so, this is what I always, and in the last committee hearing that I called, this is what I call the power development program that must be pursued in the country, and we have Mindoro as a replicable model of how it is to formulate a power development program that is sustainable. And so, in that committee hearing, I asked my colleagues to copy or replicate the Mindoro model in all of the different areas of the Philippines. And now we are already talking of a sitio energization program nationwide, as we also cover the supply situation and even the transmission line. So this is a holistic approach to power development in the country, and we did offer the Mindoro model as our model of how it is to pursue a power development program. Of course, we need to address also problems encountered by the companies due to procedural and regulatory requirements of government that require about 150 to 169 signatures before a power project can be started. This is not to mention the IPRA laws and the NIPAs, which are equally difficult to hurdle. Thus, it takes about 4 to 5 years to build power plants. Undeniably, the Philippines' current setup is discouraging and disincentivizing for many potential investors. And looking at these challenges, this representation led me to file House Bill 4479, which proposed certain amendments to EPIRA to address the critical concerns of the power sector. These proposals are not solely my own initiative, rather these are the result of a comprehensive and exhaustive consultation and discussion during the focus group discussions conducted by the Department of Energy with various stakeholders, including the private sector and the consumers. So, I do not wish to bore you with the details of what is contained in my bill, but suffice it to say that my bill aims to, among others, address power supply deficiency and investors' complaint of the long and often delayed processing of permits, licenses, and endorsements by various government departments and agencies by declaring power projects as projects of national significance, where it is envisioned that DOE shall set up a one-stop shop for processing requirements where all agencies of government, both national and local, shall be present. This is also expected to enhance the inflow of private capital in order to broaden the ownership base of power generation and distribution subsectors. If through DOE they will facilitate all of the requirements to get your permits and licenses in order, then I guess the private investors will be more than happy to embrace this. To ensure sustainability of investments, the bill will also require distribution utilities and generation companies to enter into long-term contracts for present and future markets, because short-term contracts bring instability to financial forecasts. Hence, usually investors demand higher prices with less demands on dependability and reliability. And this will ensure and make known to everyone what is the real requirements of all areas, total requirements of the Philippines, that you can project also what kind of investments and business you will bring into the country. As suggested in a UP study, the DOE and ERC must issue a policy directive or rules and regulations that power supply contracting under EPIRA shall be full requirement contracts rather than planned contingent contracts. So through the JCPC again, the Congress, through our oversight power, will try to get this through administrative fiat rather than laws that we will enact in Congress. Still, the pressing challenge is the lack or shortage of reserve capacity in all three major island grids, amid aging power plants that have been in the hands of the private sector for about 10 years now. The question that must be answered is this: why is there still a lack or shortage of reserve capacity, especially if some or many of grid's power plants suddenly conk out, as in a situation of forced outage? Everyone will recall that spike in the price of electricity going to as high as 62 pesos per kilowatt hour when we exactly had this situation in November and December of 2013. Thank God we did not experience that last March when Malampaya shut down because of interventions and proper coordination of the interruptible load program. Therefore, bearing in mind that power precedes development, because when you put in power, definitely people will gravitate towards it and people would want to engage in some business, we need to have, to have a stable and reliable supply of power, because the absence or perceived lack of a stable, reliable, and affordable power would restrict our development. And this is why Philippines remained underdeveloped for quite some time, because we are underpowered. In the power sector, of course, the other side of ensuring the supply side is the demand side. And thus, this representation had always pursued initiatives along the lines of power conservation and efficiency. And we need to religiously practice energy efficiency and conservation. And because if we just practice to plug off our unused appliances or just to set our room's temperature at 25 degrees, we are actually saving at least 10% of our electricity demand. And if we make energy efficiency and conservation a way of life, we may actually save at least 500 megawatts of power. So this would translate into like putting up another 500 megawatts, of which we need no additional investment. If we just educate the public that energy sense really saves sense, as what Secretary Petilla had always announced in media, I would like to support this initiative, and for which reason I also filed House Bill number 4393, or the Sustainable Energy and Conservation Act of 2014, which vows to ensure stable, reliable, efficient, and sufficient supply of energy for households and industries. And in the last committee hearing that I called, I suggested to DOC to look at majestic solar power in Cavite Export Processing Zone as a good model also of what investments you can do for all of our eco zones, providing rooftop solar power to all of the industries that are housed in all of our eco zones. On this particular point, the whole idea is to make renewable energy sources like solar affordable even for household consumers, so that we will encourage more households to be able to adopt rooftop technologies in their homes. So that this brings me also to a recently concluded Energy 101 seminar for legislators, and I would like to thank the European Union and UNIDO for funding this project, because I really want to make all of our legislators empowered to be able to provide a good mix of policymakers for this. Anyway, my committee is now in consultation with Henry Schumacher of ECCP towards coming up with a public-private strategy on energy conservation. And I am almost certain that the private sector will have a lot of opportunities to bring in investments on energy conservation and efficiency. And as a final point, let me, because I was not about to cover this, but then there was mention of a privileged speech I delivered in June of 2014 about re-engineering the energy sector towards sufficient power and at affordable rates, cleaner fuel at cheaper prices. I'd like just to share with you, unfortunately, I delivered it simultaneous with the privileged speech of Senator Bong Revilla. And so the whole media was in Senate, and the media did not even care to publish my speech. Anyway, I think you are the best audience for this speech. I will not deliver it. I just want to get a few points of this privileged speech on the way forward. And I'd like to point out that we are looking at natural gas as a way forward, because I'd like to draw experience from Dakota Gasification Company that produces substitute natural gas at $5 per million BTU at using old technologies, I'm sure. With newer technologies, we can produce SNG at cheaper prices. But then, we buy from Malampaya our own resource to fuel Ilihan and the nat gas plants in Batangas at $11 to $13 per million BTU. And likewise, Japan-Korea market buys natural gas at $16 to $18 per million BTU. So if we really want to achieve cheaper power rates, then why can't we produce natural gas like the way Dakota Gasification Company does it at cheaper rates? And when we do so, then we will be able to provide sufficient power to cover all of the requirements of all our industries that are heavy users of power, like cement plants, glass plants, and many other plants that consumes heavy power. And when we do so, at cheaper rate, easily we can already reduce the generation cost that you see in the bill by easily about 50%, and therefore this will add up to a cheaper power rate if we do this. But more importantly, if we are able to do this, then we will be able to host all of the industries that will provide all of the employment opportunities to our OFWs, so we need not send and export our labor, because we can host and we can provide all of the opportunities, employment opportunities for them. This is no different from the situation of Singapore, a tiny state of about 600 square kilometers. Compared to my province or my island of Mindoro, which is about 10,200 square kilometers, Singapore consumes 50,000 megawatts of power, while Mindoro, which is 20 times bigger, only consumes 40 megawatts at this point in time. So if they can do it in Singapore without even a single resource, there is not even a single liter of oil, and they are hubbing for the whole of Asia, why can't Philippines do it when we are so better strategically located? Because Philippines is in the heart of Asia and Singapore is down south of Malaysia. In fact, all of the import or exportation of oil passes through the waters of the Philippines. And so this is a challenge that I'd like to pose on all of the investors, that Philippines is a good destination area for investments. Let's give oil to Singapore, but I guess we can start with natural gas. If we can only have natural gas for the whole of Asia, then we can install all of the power requirements sufficient for the country to fuel the industries, to run the industries, and to provide for the employment opportunities for all our abused OFWs. So this is a challenge to all of us that I'd like particularly the government and the executive to please take a closer look at the privilege speech. For those who are interested, I will give you an electronic copy of this. Please just send me your email ads, and you will better understand what this vision is all about and how we will move forward this country into the country that deserves to be better than where we are right now. Thank you and good morning.
I would like to add, before I ask a question, one very interesting portion of his re-engineering proposal, which was more on the market design-oriented reforms to accelerate the capacity building, which is the most wonderful portion for me, because the market reform will bring greater confidence in the investors. At the same time, the second portion I would like your Mindoro example, redefining the energy forecast planning process from bottom to top approach, or we may call it the regionalization. I understand DOE has taken note of it, not mistaken. I think they are going to start not top to bottom, more on bottom to top because of the Mindoro experience. That's the second. The third one you can answer also. Some advocate groups are eco-zone approach for energy generation. Is this still in something serious?
Yes, in fact, I filed a bill to establish, of course, forgive me for being parochial. I always see my island province as the host for this. I did file a bill called Mindoro Energy City, which is basically an eco-zone solely for power and energy. So the bill is already filed. I'm just trying to get all of the inputs in so that when this is finally approved, then the bill can be fleshed out through that Mindoro Energy City. So that bill is presently...
Allow me to ask to Manuel Aquino. He's belonged to the Service Planning and Services Bureau, it's a department of the Congress. Manuel, how would you like to little bit rationalize? BOT was the original policy for the enhancement of the capacity building during the time of crisis. How about the PPA? How it evolved, would you like?
Yeah,
Not PPA, PPP, Public-Private Partnerships.
yeah, good morning. Before I get into the PPP, when I first got the invite from Terrapin, I asked around. I asked the market players, the regulators, and some decision makers. And I asked them, if there's one thing that should be discussed in this seminar, what should it be? They told me it should be capacity additions. That's the best thing that could be discussed in this seminar. Why? Because if not, we will continue to be treading on thin line. Why? Because we don't have a power crisis right now, but we're eating up on the reserves. And that will continue for as long as the capacity additions does not come in. Now, this has been foreseen in the IPIRA law. Under the IPIRA, it has given incentives. Power generation should be open and competitive. And it was not considered a public utility anymore. That is the most basic incentive for generation investors to come in. But as the Honorable Chairman has noticed, investments in power generation has been anemic and the process is too tedious. He cited 159 to 165 signatures. If you look at the website of the DOE, there is an energy investors guidebook. We looked at it and our staff counted the total documentary requirements in that energy guidebook. How many offices are involved? 37. Make it 45, 42 if we double count those involved in both operational registration. And how many documentary requirements? 112 from 37 to 45 agencies. I was surprised. I do get permits, but getting permits from 37 offices and 112 documentary requirements is a lot. So therefore, what is important? Now, I'm not wondering anymore why the DOE in the seminar last week, they were actually distinguishing between committed and indicative. Kasi ang indicative, they have not finished all of the requirements. The committed, all finished requirements, but still may hurdles pa na kailangan daanan. They have to go through. Therefore, what should be done? Now, this is our proposal. Now, the Honorable Chairman was actually talking about coming up with one-stop shop. Before the one-stop shop, first and foremost, why not once and for all, the 37 agencies get together, make a stand, what are the non-negotiables? Then do away with all the rest. That will streamline the process. And the investors would love it. Now, my personal proposal is that the National Competitiveness Council is into ease of doing business in the Philippines. Why cannot the National Competitiveness Council assist or lend a hand with the DOE in order to help in the streamlining process? If they do that, then it will make investing in the Philippines more fun. Di ba? I mean, the National Competitiveness Council has improved the ranks of the Philippines in ease of doing business. They could do that, perhaps with the DOE, in regard to energy investing. Now, in fact, according to the Honorable Chairman, in a country such as Peru, in the speech that he was mentioning, I was actually using the speech of the Honorable Chairman. He said, in Peru, it is the government which helps the investor get or secure the necessary permits. Why can we not consider that in the Philippines? Okay, long shot. Then, but one thing, more than posting in the website of the DOE, the Energy Investors Guidebook, this is my proposal. The Honorable Chairman is right. Do the one-stop shop. Don't just post it in the website. Who cares about the website? You know what? We've been attending conferences here and there. Even in the DOE premises, networking, the expat foreigners connected with the different embassies and the foreign investors. Of all people, they would ask me, how do I invest in this type of project, energy project? I could not answer them because the DOE is the one supposed to be doing that. Di ba? Now, another thing is that maybe perhaps they were thinking I was connected to Congress, it would facilitate the process. I don't know. Now, perhaps the DOE could do justice to this call. The Honorable Chairman was talking about projects of national significance. In all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, there are proposed amendments to the BOT law or the PPP. One of the provisions is the declaration of projects of national significance. It's now passed technically, in principle, passed by the committee for plenary consideration. One thing, however, is what we see is that we should go beyond declaring projects of national significance. Why? Because when you go to these conferences, the people will talk to you. Local government so-and-so is, instead of facilitating our energy project, is interfering in the process. That is one basic lament I heard all throughout, the role of local governments impeding energy projects. So when we declare projects of national significance, you do away with the LGUs. You give incentives to the investors. But what? At the end of the day, you sweep it under the LGUs under the rug, but they will still be there bugging you. Why? Because other than the royalty that goes to the host communities, they see no benefit to the energy project. There is one innovative idea, and that's very true. The ecozone type for Mindoro is good. The head of my office and my senior colleague, Dr. Miral, came up with another proposal. Why not consider, di ba karamihan sa inyo are involved with PESA also? They say PESA is rather successful. Why not consider the PESA type tax regime? In the PESA type tax regime, part of the gross income paid by the project actually will go or will redound to the local communities. If it's one community, it goes to this by municipality, by barangay, etc. If it's intermunicipality, then do it by gradation according to the community. In the end, perhaps you are addressing the needs of the local government units so as they will not interfere with the energy projects. The climate issue and the environment issue, my colleague will handle it. But as far as we are concerned, perhaps we should address the capacity additions. There are other host of issues involved, transmission constraints, but that we will leave for another day. For now, perhaps, hopefully, the investors will come in, government do its job, lessen the process, streamline the process, and perhaps it would be doing business, energy business is fun in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very passionate and wonderful coordination with your chair, right? And I would like to ask, before I go back here, just one very quick question. The NAPACOR manage the missionary areas, or which we call it the SPAG areas. It's some opinion of few people's that can the trigger mechanism for microgrid or mid-size grid, is it part of your re-engineering any innovative proposal similar to that? Because I think the world is moving forward also from a huge grid systems to micro and medium-sized grid network or distributed power-oriented grid networks. Any thought on that?
That's one of the approaches that we're looking at. There has got to be distributed capacities because especially in a country which is archipelagic, you really need to distribute capacity so that when calamities strike, then you can ensure that the small community will somehow have access to power. Even in, I experienced this. I'd like to draw experience from my own jurisdiction, my own province. I do recall when we were having just about 25 megawatts demand, and all of the power plants were located in the first district, particularly in the capital town or capital city of Calapan in Mindoro. Our areas in the south or in the second district where I come from and which I represent were experiencing very heavy and long brownouts. And so one of the interventions I did as a congressman of the second district was anyway, after all, these power plants are modular type already. I made sure that 5 megawatts of the initial 10 that was installed in Oriental Mindoro should be in the second district. And because of this, that eased a lot of our requirements. So I think distributed generation is the way forward, especially in SPAG areas. But the more important thing, I guess, is we should not only talk about this. What is more important is that there is a specific, definitive, clear program of distributed capacity that must be formulated by the executive And there will be a clear roadmap with timelines so that we can already expect, or the people can expect, the investors can expect what the rules will be, and so they can play the rules of the game, because it is clear and transparent for everyone to know, including the private sector.
Thank you. I'll ask one question lead to disaster risk. Climate change is a part of resilient infrastructure strategy. How do you see it from investors' point of view, mainstreaming climate change into the investment?
Okay.
And not to mention the low carbon is a
Okay.
story of the day.
I think given the fact that Philippines is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change, you've all seen the impacts of disasters, Yolanda, Glenda, droughts, El Nino, La Nina. I think it's high time that we go beyond the business as usual type of due diligence. We need to integrate what we call climate due diligence in project development, in investment decision making. Because, when you do an energy project, these projects would be impacted by climate change, from the power source, the transmission distribution lines, all the way down to the market itself. The project also could impact the climate, because when you do projects like coal, you increase emissions, or when you do renewables, you decrease emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a need to account for these emissions increases and emissions reductions as well. What the key point now would be, what do we mean by mainstreaming climate in investment decisions? It's mainly an articulation of what you call or integration of climate metrics in the energy projects. No? Instead of speaking like megawatt hours or megawatts, why not articulate the co-benefit, which is like emissions reduced? When you speak of climate proofing projects, that means a project or electricity that's providing 24/7, 364 days a year. So what issues do you need to address to maintain that kind of electricity supplied constantly throughout the year? And therefore, you need to do what you call adaptive measures. And these could be engineering or non-engineering measures. So like in the case of, say, for example, in the adaptation side of things, what do you need to do is to do a rapid assessment, no? Do an approximation of where climate would impact on these energy infrastructures. It could be historical flood for the past 100 years and project that in the future, and maybe the extremeness of these climate events would make these flooding storms more extreme than what happened in Manila and Glenda. So you need to do what you call a climate risk vulnerability assessment. That's easy, that's cheap. That can be done in 2 months, but you need to do that to ensure that your energy projects will be sustainable in general. In the same manner, why do you need to do climate mainstreaming? Because there are co-benefits. One obvious co-benefit is that you mitigate the risks of the impacts of climate change. Number two, you have government assess their emissions reduction commitment on an international level. And most important of all, there is access to what we call an emerging climate finance. There is now what you call a climate finance available in the market right now. It's focused either on mitigation financing or adaptation financing. There is that component where climate finance would only focus on what we call climate finance deficit, meaning the additional cost to make your project climate proof, the additional cost to make your project low carbon in that sense. Then again, on the extreme side, we have what we call the Green Climate Fund, which is now offerable. They are roughly at around like $9 billion to $10 billion by this year, and we're looking by 2020 at least $100 billion a year to invest specifically in mitigation and adaptation type of projects. The question is, what do you need to do? Exactly. You need to integrate all these climate proofing measures for mainstream climate, low carbon, climate resilient parameters in your energy projects, so that you, in a way, could tap that kind of climate financing, blend it with traditional financing, local financing, older financing, and the like. And that should help what's called sustainable financing in support of your energy projects. So that's how I see it. And I think the best time to do that would be now, because by 2020, if you have a institution that has like $100 billion investment fund,
you need to have a portfolio of projects ready to be invested in during that time. So the time to do that, to prepare your projects would be from 2015 into 2017. So the window of opportunity is right now. This will take at least 3 years to beef up a project, to make it what you call technically viable, climate proof, and acceptable to a lot of stakeholders involved. So that's how it's going.
Can we? I also would like to ask the moderator enjoy a privilege to insert his own opinion. But your engineering concept is very much like a rethinking the ethos of doing business style. And I would like to ask one question. Engineering is good concept, and maybe this is an opportunity. The institution in the Philippines, like near Napapor particularly, with the institutional memory, to see a better and greater role for them, because I think it was the first session this morning which appreciated the role of Napapor in the past and now present. At the same time, the role of the office of the highest office of the Department of Energy in terms of relationship, and maybe we need to empower more, because at the present condition it looks like they don't have teeth anymore. They don't have capacity to interfere because of the law itself. They are ceremonial head. How do you, we will call it the redesign, the role of the relationship, the redesign, the policy leadership.
I really do not know. I think it's all about I think Department of Energy has the plenary powers to make things happen. They have the plenary powers to execute. And so I think what it takes is really leadership to make things happen. And I've seen flashes of good leadership qualities in the Department of Energy. In fact, you know, even in a electric cooperative called La Sureco, they supplanted the GM from identified by NEA and change the GM. No? So if you really want to do and make things happen, it can be done. And so I don't think there is need to really further empower them. Probably we need to probably rationalize some of the functions of the agencies, but it's all about management, which in simple terms is doing things right, and it's all about leadership, which is doing the right things. If you have a good manager and a good leader in any of this department, things will happen and things can happen.
No question about leadership. We have seen in the partnership, Ms. Edith, who is here, the head of the NEA, that they have done pretty good work in restructuring some electric co-ops. That's a process in going with the leadership is also very enable. My question was more in the context of rationalization. You're right, and rationalizing the relationship with the institutions. Rationalizing the relationship of in terms of highest policy making body, how do they move forward, particularly?
Well, policy making is Congress, and DOE is there to execute the policies that are enunciated by Congress. I think we have a PIRA, we have downstream all the regulation law, we have a lot more other laws that already provides the ammunition for the alter ego of the president, the executive, to execute all of this. And it, as I said, it all takes leadership. Like as you mentioned, Edith is one good leader and manager of the National Electrification Administration, because she makes things happen. And you know, we have a lot of problems on electric cooperatives. We see a lot of problems like ailing cooperatives, electric cooperatives. But at the end of the day, she's able to handle all of these hurdles. Of course, there will be continuous concerns and issues that she will have to confront with on a daily basis, especially with consumers who do not want to pay. Then we have a problem. But again, I think NEA is running very well, and I'd like to take my hats off, Edith, Administrator Bueno.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for your re-engineering plan, at least on the table, and look forward to see it.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.